Fallout 76 suffered from an abysmal launch in 2018. This game was criticized by many players and critics for its lack of fundamental Fallout features at launch, including human NPCs, which really comprised the very heart and soul of previous Fallout games, as players obtained much of these stories and world building in previous titles from interactions and quests involving NPCs. The game also featured a large amount of Bethesda bugs, or features as players like to jokingly call them, and the game launched without private servers as an always online connected game, which really flew in the face of previous Fallout games that focused on the single player offline experience for players, similar to the Elder Scrolls Skyrim, Oblivion, etc. And it went way back even before Bethesda got the rights to this franchise. Now, it wouldn't be until 2019 when private servers were introduced to Fallout 76, but the community still had a lot of criticisms of the game, including a lack of interesting activities and fun quests, along with the still absent presence of human NPCs at the time. Now, private servers were also locked behind the requirement of being a paying Fallout First member, a membership that was introduced that allowed access to these servers with friends, and also rewarded players with free items each month in the in-game Fallout Atomic Shop. As content kept being added to this game, with the game mainly being supported by Fallout First memberships and in-game purchases of cosmetics and settlement items, 2020 saw the introduction of the Wastelanders expansion. This is where the game, in my opinion, really started to get interesting. This expansion added the much-awaited human characters back into the game. These NPCs could finally be talked to and interacted with that helped build interest in the world and make it feel more alive. It's worth noting that the reception of the game has been much more positive since the introduction of Wastelanders, and the free seasonal content that Bethesda has been introducing to this game helped alleviate a lot of player concerns, but there are many Fallout fans who still don't connect to the game or who have very mixed opinions like I do. Now, there are also tons of Fallout fans who never came back after the abysmal launch, and plenty who never checked the game out because of its always online nature. Because of that, this is a little bit the black sheep of the Fallout family in terms of games, and people have a lot of different opinions on this game. Now, I know that we're looking at the internet, and with the internet, most things are polarizing. But if we take a look at this game's subreddit, it really just takes one look to actually see how polarizing some aspects of this game can be between players, as tempers often escalate between the more casual players, hardcore players, or the fringe few who really define their Fallout interest through this game, which seems to happen with pretty much every online multiplayer title, and we all have our thing we really care about, so no hate to them, but it kind of makes conversations about this game on Reddit, Twitter, and other places range from super friendly and the kind players actually voicing their opinions to essentially people devolving to the kind of delete yourself, end your life type stuff, the insults that the internet often brings. This game finds a way to both bring people together when people are working cooperatively to have fun, but also to tear people apart very quickly as someone voices their opinions on old legacy weapons in the game from the early days, or balancing issues, or something they don't like, and people basically just tell them to get over it. It's kind of the nature of the internet. It's very up its own ass at times, so this does happen with most groups who are dedicated to one game or IP, but I do think it's interesting that previous Fallout games never really made these types of different players and groups interact with each other, because they weren't online. And in order to avoid this in 76, players must either completely divorce themselves from online discussion of this and purchase Fallout First to play the game alone, or many gather a group large enough of friends or people that they meet online to start a private server and work together, as there are many activities that are really only accomplishable in bigger groups, especially the in-game events. Fallout 76 still has the difficult job of balancing its experience so that all groups of players from casual to more hardcore can enjoy the game, a job that even renowned studios like Blizzard with World of Warcraft or Bungie with Destiny have found is actually a very difficult task to fulfill. One game I can think of that did a very good job with this is Final Fantasy XIV, which is still going strong and seems to have no end in sight, but this is really a big point of contention for a lot of games, especially when they're games that people play together. When it comes to me, there are parts of this game that I absolutely love and adore. I am a huge fan of this world and the mythology of the Fallout universe, and Fallout 76 really does deliver on those fronts, at least now, playing it modern day in 2022 when this video is made. The world of Appalachia is incredibly interesting, and this game happens to take place in the Fallout timeline before really any other game. It takes place only about 25 years after the worldwide nuclear war that turned the Fallout world into what it is throughout the series. So because of that, that means that other than some flashbacks that take place before the war in some other games, this is the earliest set Fallout mainline game. It does mean as well that because of this time period, there are lots of new creatures and lore for players to discover and learn about. There are also unique factions that do not show up in later games, along with familiar groups that are in their earlier stages than we'll see them later, such as the Brotherhood of Steel, which we now get to see in its early formative years. In terms of creatures, the Fallout 76 teams opted to introduce interesting cryptids from varying urban legends in the Fallout universe, showing that more lore did exist in this universe beyond just that which was created from the radiation of the nuclear war. Previously, the main non-radioactive source of creatures in the Fallout universe was the existence of aliens and UFOs, such as the Zetans, but now players got to learn about other creatures that existed both before and after the Great War, such as the legendary Mothman or variants of him. There's a lot of really cool stuff that I think they did put into this game, especially with lore, to really make it feel like West Virginia, especially with all of the real-world lore that does reside there. It's interesting to note that real-life America, like really any other country, is home to its urban myths, legends, and lore stories, whether it be the interesting lore and shared stories of the Native Americans from times past in our country to things that people see now. You know, you can even look back throughout history at something like Spring-Heeled Jack in the United Kingdom. There's always kind of these things popping up in different countries where there are these creatures that people believe in or characters of mischief throughout history that I think are really interesting. And it's cool that this game actually managed to sort of bring that up into the Fallout universe beyond just it being a radiation thing. I think they did a good job. This is kind of how I wish that Assassin's Creed had handled some of its supernatural elements earlier on, when it was sort of trying to debunk them more than embrace them. And I thought it was really cool to see Fallout actually doing this. It's one of my favorite things about the world building and lore of this game. The gameplay of Fallout 76 can be extremely fun. It can be, but it very much depends on what the player is into. Players who connected more with the role-playing aspects of Fallout 1 through 3 and New Vegas are often actually disappointed with Fallout 76's lack of karma system, perk card focused leveling system that it kind of changed things around with. It's very different than previous systems to level up and balance online, and the game's focus on an always online Fallout experience. It's worth mentioning that up to this point in time, the very core and DNA of the Fallout experience had been rooted in single player gameplay, and Fallout 76 is a major deviation of that, and a lot of people didn't connect with that. I generally find myself just playing this game with my wife in private servers, only joining into main public servers for an event that's too hard for two people to complete, or in order to maybe buy items from other players that they sell at their player-run settlement shops, which is pretty interesting and a cool mechanic in the game, and a great way to get rid of items that you don't need to get money and caps to actually use on something you do need. I've never personally been a big meet strangers online and play games with them person. I know I might seem like I'm very outgoing, but that's really just with the people that I personally care about. I'm a fairly shy person. I do know that many people are into this type of game, and it's worth giving the background that I just kind of never really have been. I did grow up playing RuneScape and some similar MMORPGs online, but I often played them by myself, or I would meet one or two people here and there and just kind of stick with them. I've never really been very good at meeting tons of people online, and I'm sure that does somewhat affect my experience compared to many players. I know many people are fans of this type of gameplay, and I've had a lot of good and bad experiences in my interaction with the Fallout 76 community, both in-game and online. There are tons of players who are extremely kind, and it's worth noting that they hand out free items to help starting players get really going into the game at the earliest levels of the game, and even those online who are willing to log in just to play with these new players and help them get used to the game and level up. So of course there is a lot of griefing as well, like in any online game. Bethesda did try to mitigate this somewhat, but a lot of players are able to circumvent the PvP system by attempting to trap players in their settlements with traps, or by blasting them with radiation items to kill them and take their things in areas that should otherwise be considered safe, like a settlement, without ever engaging in official PvP interaction or allowing a player to defend themselves. One thing I think is kind of ridiculous is just the lack of care from Bethesda in ever really fixing this, which has been a problem since the game's launch, and it still happens if you're in public servers. And there is a lack of self-policing in the community. Really no one cares when someone's being an asshole, and that's led to a lot of people either to not bother with the game's public servers, or kind of drop the game altogether after having bad experiences paired with the other issues that this game still faces. Like any internet experience, you end up having to discern between who actually wants to play the game with you in a cooperative experience, which it kind of was designed to be, and those who define their entire personality by being an asshole to you. It's going to be something anywhere you go, especially in multiplayer games, but that's just kind of how it is. There's always the meme of the guy camping in the corner with a shotgun in Call of Duty in the earlier games and putting down tactical inserts and stuff, if anybody knows this old reference. It's sort of like that. Like, yes, you're not doing anything explicitly against the rules of the game, but you're being a bit of a prick and ruining the experience for a lot of other people who just do not want to deal with you. When it comes to the gunplay of Fallout 76, this game follows in the footsteps of Fallout 4, opting to move away from VATS to a more fast-paced action shooting game. VATS builds are actually definitely still a thing, but VATS operates differently in 76, not slowing or stopping time, as that would really be impossible in a lobby that houses multiple players. This is an online game after all. This was a definite point of contention in Fallout 4 as well, where many players felt that the more RPG and number-based systems had been stripped down in favor of a more casual experience for new players. In the same way, Fallout 76 is both a streamlined and complex game, as builds are extremely important in this game, and I'd argue actually more important than they were in Fallout 4 to the overall game design. The perk card system at first may seem random to new players, but it's focused on getting players to specialize in and focus on key stats and perks, and this is both a positive and a negative to players, as it can take a well-rounded team to complete a lot of objectives, so there are some activities in this game that are just not focused on those who want to play the game by themselves, or want to play as a specific build. This isn't necessarily a bad thing on its own, as this is a multiplayer game, as I've said many times in the video, and that is a justification. But it's a definite departure from what the series' history was primarily focused on, which was single-player adventure. When I'm playing Fallout 76 by myself or with a friend, I often have a lot of fun, but I've noticed the problems for myself coming in when I try and play this game with other players in public servers. Between the fact that enemy spawns are shared, meaning that players can clear out an entire town and leave really nothing for you to do there, and the fact that the in-game economy is driven by a mixture of player and Bethesda's greed, in my opinion, especially with the Atomic Shop that is constantly trying to get you to spend money. And look, I'm going to be honest, it works sometimes. I'm a big fan of the Fallout universe. It certainly does feel like a wasteland at times on public servers in a different way. Other times, people are incredibly kind, generous, and willing to work together, like any game, and it sadly really depends on who you happen to meet. There's really no in-game reporting feature or anything that matters to dissuade players from being an asshole to each other. A game like Fallout 76 only really works well online with team-based activities when players are willing to work together as a team. And it's hard to actually get that going between more reserved, shyer players like myself, those who have really no interest in being friendly or working with others in a group that actually wants them to team up, and the more tempered players that are just kind of there to have fun and actually play the game. One of my favorite parts about Fallout 76 is just exploring the world, as it seems that a lot of care was put into things like creature placement, lore, quest and world building, and variants of enemies that change as you level up. I'm a big fan of many of the weapons in this game and how they play, and I love how you can see a complete improvement in the settlement building portion of this game, though even that portion is actually marred by a very pay-to-play system, where most housing or interesting settlement items are locked behind paywalls in the Atomic Shop. I love the focus the game has on figuring out what happened to people in Appalachia just years earlier though, and I'm a big fan of its ability to pull me into some activity I didn't expect to really give a crap about by interesting me in the world, lore, and enemy factions that I'm dealing with. I've also found that leveling up in Fallout 76 does feel very rewarding, as the game sort of knows how to hit your dopamine centers by rewarding you with in-game trading card packs and other useful items, along with its overall focus on the fun retro aesthetic of the Fallout universe. To be fair to other players' experiences and earlier players, I played this game for a few weeks in 2019-ish, and I never returned until late 2021, when the majority of positive changes had been implemented to this game. So I can't imagine what my frustration would have been with 76 if I had been a longtime player dealing with the growing pains of the game the whole time. I don't really believe Fallout 76 is a perfect game by any means. I have plenty of problems with it, like I've said, but I find myself going through phases where I will play this game more for a few weeks or maybe a month and then take a break from it to focus on more complete feeling single player games. There are times where 76 feels very rewarding as I find interesting items, locations, and characters from the Fallout universe, but oftentimes it also feels like I'm grinding my time away on an experience that will eventually fade, with all this progress being lost, as is the nature of an online experience. I'm by no means against online multiplayer games at all, but I've played enough of these games that have died that I often find I'm limiting my time and interest on games like this, and I really do wish they would think of the future of this game and eventually allow players to purchase, say, a complete edition that they can play offline, or at least play with the content that they already have on their system offline, including things they bought in the Atomic Shop in the very microtransaction economy of this game. I guess I'm interested to hear your thoughts on Fallout 76. I would say I have a very love-hate relationship with this game. There's times where I'm like having a great time with it, having a blast, really enjoying it, and feeling like I'm in that Fallout world, and other times where I feel like I play the game for a few days, I'm really burned out and didn't accomplish anything. Have you ever played this game? Did the launch put you off from ever playing this game? Are you open to games getting better over time or waiting for that to happen after launch? Maybe even seeing a game comes out okay or bad, like No Man's Sky, waiting until it gets good and buying it? I guess there's a lot of questions Fallout 76 raises for players that I'm interested to hear what you have to say about in the comments down below. Please be sure to leave a like for this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe for more content. And if you want to help support this channel, we have a Patreon where you can unlock exclusive access to videos